At a time when we're losing our oldest and most precious trees and forests from around the world, I'm curious to understand if and why this matters to all of us. Welcome to the Meaning of Trees podcast. I'm Tom Hill, and it's here that I meet with people from all walks of life to explore the answers to one essential question. What do trees mean to you? Welcome back, podcast listeners. So, as soon as I'd set up today's interview, I thought it would be a great idea to have a human geographer, an inclusion and belonging consultant, and a National Trust Race Equity Network co-founder with me. It's great to have you back. How are you doing, Arifah?
Hello, Tom. You didn't need to do all that. Yeah, I'm good, actually. As always, a mixed bag, but being here this morning, talking about trees, I feel good. Yeah, feeling grounded. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, yeah. Do you know what? I've seen some photos recently that you shared of you kind of forest bathing. Just wondered where that was. You were like by a river, I think.
Actually, I went on a hike. This is how do I make this a shorter story? I was house sitting at a friend's when the door rang, answered the door, and there's a company called Milk and More, so they deliver milk to your door. And I saw just like the most beautiful woman, and she looked really nervous. She was like, "Oh, it's my first day." And so I started talking to her, and I said, "Do you get commission if I buy the—" It was never about the milk, okay? So put the milk to the side. I don't even drink milk. And then she asked me if I had any weekend plans, and I told her I just got back hiking from Sheffield. And she was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to go hiking. I was supposed to go tomorrow, but my friends always flake." And I was like, "If it's not weird just going with a stranger, that's my car. Let's go." And I was like, "But think about it." So we exchanged numbers, and then finally 1 month later, she reached out, and I was like, "I'm so serious. Let's go." And I sent her a selfie, just reminding her that I'm not a serial killer. And she said yes, got the train towards me, and then we went for some walks in the Chiltern Hills, and then we drove to Taplow to see the Thames River actually clean, and just sat by a different river as well. And she's Muslim as well, so we prayed side by the river. And then I sent you pictures of it because who else?
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, I did wonder where you got to, but yeah, basically that was some like guerrilla forest bathing that you set up. Then I'm sure that she was really appreciative to have, someone to go with.
Yeah.
And from the Chilterns to the southwest of England, for today's episode, we're going to be really focusing on a special meeting of minds that my guest today, Alejandra Hart, helped to host. When I heard about this story and I read a beautiful article that she'd created for Woodland Trust, I just really wanted to meet her because it was clear that she was somebody that had been thinking about forest reciprocity and those kind of themes of connection that this podcast is all about. So thanks so much for joining me today, Ale. How are you doing?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Arifah. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so excited to be here and to be talking to both of you about our shared love for trees and the connections that we have. Especially that specific day was incredible. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper into it.
Thank you. And actually, before we delve into it as well, I know that the three of us all work for, big NGOs, but I just want to kind of make it clear that this call today is definitely about the three of us speaking our own minds and from our hearts, just to kind of clear the decks there a bit. This is us speaking as individuals. So let's get to the first proper question. Ale, what do trees mean to you?
I think it's a quite difficult question to answer. It's hard to reflect on it and separate myself from my own feelings towards trees and the mind of a conservationist and a scientist. But for me, they're all about connection and just feeling grounded, feeling happier and more at peace with the natural world and with everything around me when I'm at a forest. And I feel like that is a sense that has been growing in me since I was a child. I grew up in the mountains in Spain, in a small town, and my dad lived in the UK. My mum lived in Spain. And maybe there was some sense of loneliness throughout that time, but being in nature made me feel so connected and just understand myself even better, away from the anxiousness and the busyness of city life. And it brought a sense of peace that it continues to bring every day of my life. And now, having moved to the Southwest, I moved to feel that connection once again, because in East Anglia and Norfolk, there's not that many trees, not that many places where I felt connected to. And I came to Devon for one day to visit some family members and some friends for the first time. And I felt called to this landscape and just being surrounded by it. And then I started learning about rainforests. And I was lucky enough to have a job that works with temperate rainforests in the UK. And I learn more and more every single day. And that also brings me a sense of connection and belonging to the landscape. I feel as part of it being here. Yeah, I think it also keeps evolving as I learn more and more about trees and ancient trees and new trees and just native trees, the way that we've managed the land. What would it have been like years ago? What is it like today? I keep reflecting as well in Spain and all the drought and flood and climate change and how that is going to change the landscape. So how can we remain connected to it in constant change and instability? So yeah, that is something I keep reflecting on, I think, day by day.
Yeah, what you're speaking to is that real amazing quality of trees to cut across geographical boundaries, cultural boundaries, and even time as well, right? So you're talking about the future, but if you don't mind, I'd like to go back in time actually and ask a question that may go deep actually into where you've come from and perhaps where that connection might have come from in you. So how do trees in your life, Ale, connect you to your ancestors and your ancestry?
So my grandma was from Argentina. She migrated to Spain when she was only 20 years old. And sadly, I had never had the chance to really talk to her about these things. So it's always been a big question in my life of where she came from. And I know that we have some indigenous roots. And I know my granddad used to do some astral dreaming as well. He kept diaries. So I was able to connect to all of that through it. And I continue to connect to all my ancestry through just reading and trying to talk to my grandma what she remembers, which might not be as much. But I think I come from a family of many, many places. So my grandma had indigenous roots. She had French roots. And then I have my dad, who also had Jewish roots, Irish roots, and just trying to bring all those aspects into me, being a bilingual child, has been really tough. I don't know if you come from two different cultures or two different families, but it can make you not feel really connected to either of them in a way. So just reading and writing and doing research for my undergrad and my postgrad on Indigenous knowledge and immigration and cultural diversity has really helped me understand who I am a bit better. So yeah, for my undergraduate dissertation, I looked into power dynamics in the Mapuche of Chile and the transformative power of resistance, and really a lot about this indigenous knowledge system and Western scientific system. And a lot of times we talk about integration of one and the other, but I really explored how that is in itself a form of Western power. I'm going to integrate indigenous knowledge into scientific knowledge because of the benefit of sustainable development, which sustainable in itself is a Western term. So there is so much research and so many gaps in this that can appropriate indigenous systems without really going back into the emotional resonance of indigenous knowledge systems that is lacking in the Western knowledge. So if we're talking about integration without understanding that is so emotional and so human, and our connection to trees is also that, it's not just scientific, it can bring a lot of damage. So in my undergraduate dissertation, I looked into how can we transform power into a power that comes from within and it can be good for everyone and nature and the people that are marginalized and that are constantly suffering in social environmental conflicts in South America and all around the world. So that was something that was amazing to study. And I came to the conclusion that something that may not be as seen as transformative power and a form of resistance is arts and music and oral systems of knowledge. Storytelling. We've been passing on that knowledge for centuries and so many generations, but now we don't maybe see it as a form of resistance and a form of transformation. The same with music, poetry, arts, and that is really huge in Chile and in the Mapuche indigenous communities. So I just explored all that and tried to talk about it in a way that wasn't about integration, but about collaboration of both and building bridges between the two knowledge systems for a better future, I guess. Yeah.
I'm just kind of absorbing what you've said there and just kind of taking some reflection on that. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your grandfather's diary? So what kind of stories were recorded in there?
Yeah, well, it was all a bit difficult to put into words, I think. I still don't really understand them myself because they're so old and I don't know, they're his. And I think when we write dreams, if you can think about writing dreams, they're yours. Someone that is reading them might not understand them fully. So yeah, I think some of it is quite private that I wouldn't like to dive too deep into it. That's okay. If you come from a family that has gone through conflicts, it can be quite hard to talk about. And I don't want to talk about it wrong. It's a difficult topic that I try to feel more than talk about. Does that make sense? I read it, I listen, I try to understand it, and I guide my own writing through it. But then when it comes to actually telling it, maybe it's not for me to tell.
I totally get that. Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate that. Arifah, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking a lot. But in general, I feel grateful and grounded. With every guest that you bring onto the show, Tom, I'm always intrigued and curious because we get people from loads of different thought processes and ways of connection. And when you ask the meaning of trees, you get quite deep into what matters to people and their values and their heritage. And it's been an honor for me to hear more people from every corner of the earth just saying, this identity thing, it's real. The little confusion that I had growing up, tied between two different cultures, well, three really, and being multilingual and the push and pull between power and empowerment and what are we left with post empires and whatnot, but at the same time, how do we acknowledge what's happened and what's the etiquette, I guess, that we should be using to learn from each other for the sake of ourselves, for the sake of our body, not this body, I mean like the earth, for the sake of our trees, for the sake of our land and our people. How do we actually learn? How do we share knowledges with respect? I mean, integration with the soul, with the spirit, and not severing and not disconnecting knowledge and soul and emotion. And saying, okay, we'll be objective about it. This is what they do. Let's just take all the practice out and just, this can apply to that tree. It just doesn't work like that. And I think more and more we're learning that. And my mind is percolating on a lot of different things, but also just, it's an honor hearing your story. So thank you for sharing. And you're not the only one who didn't ask their grandparents the questions. But I have a funny feeling that even if you asked, you would have got short replies. So
Yeah, I guess just on that as well. So I was thinking, actually, have I ever produced anything similar to perhaps what you describe of your granddad's diaries? And yeah, I definitely have. And I wouldn't want anyone to see it, actually. Certainly when I was learning creativity in my early 20s, like it was raw. And I'd been through quite a few, issues. And it was literally coming out of me. And like sometimes in the middle of the night, I'd even wake up and I'd just kind of like write in a way that I felt like possessed, actually. And then in the morning, I used to just kind of spill out whatever my consciousness held. And by the way, that ain't always like pretty. in terms of how we might judge things societally, like, yeah, there was stuff in there that just wasn't positive or constructive. But actually what that meant was that I was able to reflect on those things. And it was like, how do you put it? Like kind of stream of consciousness writing, and to just kind of dump that on the page. That basically helps you to see, all right, okay, here's what's going on in that place. And then that helps you to make a decision, I guess, to help, steward or shepherd those thoughts and those mental patterns to something hopefully more positive. And I genuinely feel like it helped me to do that as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share that yeah, perhaps I can relate to your granddad in that way, and why you wouldn't want to talk about that as well. But actually, yeah, I think what you said, Ale, is like, it's more like the essence of what he wrote there. And you could see how perhaps raw it might be, that's actually in itself a strength and something inspiring to take into your own stories in life, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
So I think that probably leads us quite nicely to a particular story that we wanted to chat about today. One that you kind of witnessed and recorded personally. And I'm going to be quiet now and just kind of hand over to you to kind of tell that story. But yeah, I guess I was alerted by an article titled Rainforest Echoes from the Amazon to Dartmoor. So yeah, what can you tell us about that one?
Well, that day was one of the most amazing days of my whole life. It was so emotional. Yeah, as a conservationist and writer, and just early in my career to be experiencing that, it's quite magical. So basically, we had a group of Amazon leaders come to visit a rainforest site on Dartmoor called Buckland. And well, they came with a group of NGOs, some of which are fighting social environmental conflicts in the Amazon. And they saw one of Sam Manning's, so the project officer for the Rainforest Recovery Project. They saw one of his talks, and they were really inspired by it. And they thought it would be great to visit this site in Devon and just spend the day with us, so we could share our knowledge and just talk about our experiences with rainforests and the differences as well. Obviously, it's temperate rainforest, tropical rainforest. And then all of a sudden we were there, and it was like, whoa, there's 6 of the Woodland Trust, so leaders from the Warani and the Ashaninka, and some members of the NGOs. So we were all spending the day together with translators as well. And I was really lucky to speak Spanish. Even though they spoke Portuguese, I was able to understand quite a lot. So I felt, as I was transcribing and writing, that even though I could understand everything, maybe like 70%, I could feel the emotions behind the words. And that was really important for me then to be able to write a story about it. But the main thing that I took away from that day was how they were talking to us. It was so different to the way that we speak, or that I speak at least, in a really fast-paced environment. It was like they were talking to the trees. And by they, I mean the members of the Ashaninka and the Warani people. And they were just talking really slow and like a whisper to the wind. They didn't feel like they had to speak really fast. So they could take 20 minutes to tell us something. And it was so powerful what they were saying. The Warani Jukareshu was her name. She asked us to do a blessing before we entered the forest. That was quite something, as people that come from the UK, to all of a sudden be asked to stop for a minute before we continue with the day. So we were asked to just stop and listen, and she did a blessing in her language. And then we were all just in a circle, taking a moment to listen to the trees and to ask for permission to enter. And that is something that maybe we don't think about, but is a reciprocity between the forest and us. If we had to take from them, we also have to give back. And that was quite special as well. I think it grounded all of us, and it made us all understand, okay, this is going to be quite a big day for us, that we're going to have a whole mindset just changed or questioned. It was a 30-minute walk, but it probably took us like 2 or 3 hours to get to where we were meant to go, because we kept stopping and asking questions. And they were basically saying, who are you doing this for? What is the purpose of the rainforest restoration work that you're doing? Is it for yourselves? Is it for the earth? Is it for the nature? Is it for the forest around us? Where are the indigenous land? All of these questions, some of them were quite hard to answer, because I feel like we are so disconnected from our indigeneity. So where are our roots, and what's happened to this land. The forest has changed so much, and they were saying how they couldn't hear the forest guardians when they were walking. And it was when they got to the water, the river, that they could hear the river talk. But before then, they felt that the forest was dead or was really fragmented. So they were talking about how the rainforest that we have in Devon and Cornwall, it used to cover 75% of the landscape, and now it only covers 8%. And I think until recently, maybe we didn't even understand in that we had temperate rainforests, and now that is changing. But it was really about listening that day to them. But it made us all feel like we had a lot to understand and a lot to learn about. But yeah, it was magical. And I have so much ratings from the day. And another thing, it was quite hard to explain, oh, we've lost the land because we've cut it down and we've planted, plantations just for production. That is something that they couldn't understand, because they were saying about, obviously they use the land, they use the forest, but they never let it be lost in the way that we've let it be lost. So they let it regenerate before taking more. I left the forest and I was just so emotional and crying, and I couldn't stop crying on the drive back, because I felt so, maybe a grief, I guess, and also just the responsibility of it. I'm feeling like it's really hard to make a difference, and it's really hard to change anything. But we are trying, and I think that the project I work for is incredible. So our plan is to triple the amount of rainforest that we have in Devon and Cornwall by 2050 with the Southwest Rainforest Alliance. So that's a partnership of many organizations in the Southwest. So I do feel hopeful, but at the same time, we are still disconnected. And for me, that is the most important part of it. When they were asking, who are you doing this for? I think a big part of it was, are you just doing it for the trees, for conservation and climate change? Or are you doing it for society and everyone around you who knows about this work? And they were saying that if people are not aware of it, it doesn't matter how many trees you plant, because it's the heart of the people that have to be connected to the rainforest restoration and forest restoration. And if that is not there, then nothing is going to change as many trees as we plant, because we're going to go back to it. So we really have to have a change in the mindset of how we view things. And as a communications officer, how can I inspire that people to change their minds through storytelling? Storytelling in conservation, it can sometimes be really scientific or science-based, which I think is really important still. But I don't think it inspires change or hope or action. So how can we sort of mix both and not be afraid of writing about our emotions and just showing a bit more of ourselves in our writing, whether it's academia or any form of writing, because we are not objective beings that are separated from our emotions. We are so subjective, and our whole lived experience completely changes the way we write, what we read, what we've grown up with. It's like it's always going to be showing somewhere. So don't be afraid of just talking about your emotions and talking about how you feel, like the emotions of conservation initiatives and everything that comes with it. I want to bring this regenerative storytelling into it. So how can we talk about conservation topics in a way that creates something inside of us, inspires people, that moves people? So I think I really see my role as doing that. And we've had storytelling all of our lives, all of our past generations, through generations. Storytelling is what keeps us all together, I think, and united from the past to the future and the present. The living ecosystems that are around us have so many stories to tell. So how can we tell them in a way that brings deeper connections and action to the land? So telling stories from the heart, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me.
And I think for anyone listening who wants to connect, here's another one for your list. Alejandra Hart. Look her up. Thank you for sharing that day, because it was really moving. There was times where I turned my camera off just because my heart swelled. There's grief there that's within my own inner world. And I think anyone could feel that, whether they connect or not. There's things that stir up in your body when you're in nature, or just hearing humans connect or slow down or be slowed down. So yeah, firstly, thank you for sharing that. And also I started thinking about the identity of Britain and our temperate forests. And me and Tom have spoken before about what is British identity? And if we could find that for our nature, if we could find that for ourselves, I mean, that really is the hot topic, isn't it? And you see it in our landscape. Maybe that is our identity, that temperate forest that you've walked into. And your point about we can't actually go backwards, but what we can do is look forwards. And there's a feeling of loss when we talk about history, which has to just be embraced, I think. And it doesn't mean that that is the only story. There's also hope, there's joy, there's us sat here together just chatting about trees. But yeah, just to round it off, I would say to anyone listening to this day, what I took from it is every single one of us can do the basic act of walking into a place with humility and asking. I think it just serves us so well because as someone who lives here and I use a phone and I get into a car that I drive and I fill and I fuel and there's so much in my life that like my phone I have to charge it, I control it, you get into this habit of I have to be in control and that's tiring actually. And if we go into forests, if we go into people's houses, if we go into people's conversations and opinions, I think, how about number one, I ask, can I join? Can I come in? May I enter? Even if it's within my mind and my heart, just to slow me down as a reminder. The second one, slow down. Because whenever I go abroad, whenever I go back home, I'm like, whoa, we are fast paced. So number two is slow down. And number three is just ask yourself prompting questions, whether it's a project, whether it's a conversation, whether it's just you walking in nature. Just ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Who does this serve? And it's okay. Whatever the answer is, that's okay. It's just like, oh, if I didn't ask that question, I wouldn't have heard the answer. And sometimes like the most simple things are the profound things because you realize, oh, I'm not doing that. Why am I not doing that?
If it's okay, I've got a couple of sort of follow-up questions to what you've shared there. So one of them is that when that meeting happened, and I love that it was just kind of happen chance as well. But yeah, one of the other people that was there shared something on one of the social media platforms that I saw before I'd read your article actually. And it was also a really heartfelt kind of summary of how the day had impacted that person. But what I found really interesting was that there was at least one kind of detractor that very quickly jumped in to kind of make less credible this account shared. So it was almost using like an intellectual kind of standpoint to say that, this argument that the connection factor with land, place, identity is kind of really the root of many of the issues that we see. That's what the piece said. But then, these kind of comments sort of basically said that they were extremely skeptical about that and that there's a real danger to think that people termed Indigenous are somehow kind of holier than everyone else. That also, there's a risk there that we can sort of overplay their ideas because they perhaps don't have a scientific understanding of the ecology. And I just found that so interesting to kind of see. So Ale, I was thinking in the light of that kind of, I guess, critique and criticism, and as someone that has, I'm sure, thought so much about the Indigenous culture sort of context, what would you say to those kinds of comments? And how do we tread the right kind of line between misappropriation and valuing and respecting and taking inspiration from others' ways of seeing the world?
Well, I think the first thing is to not romanticize. That's for sure. It's really easy to fall into this romanticization of Indigenous knowledge, being guardians of the earth. And we just have to make sure that we're not doing that, in my opinion, because it's not like that at all. When I was walking around the forest, I was talking to someone about this, actually. He was saying, how are you going to talk about this? How are you going to write about it? And being an anthropologist and knowing everything that anthropology has done in the past, I've reflected on this topic a lot, on not doing the same and not appropriating knowledge, not romanticizing knowledge, and just trying to talk about it in just normal terms that you would talk about anything, really. I think in the past, anthropology and other fields of study have often seen Indigenous peoples and knowledge as the other that needs to be studied, that needs to be talked about, researched, or even the opposite. And I think now that we are more aware of these issues, it's just not falling into either of those categories. Indigenous peoples are not one, they're many, and they're all very different, have very different knowledge systems, very different lived experiences, and they're in a very different moment in where they are in the present. And in this occasion, it was the Warani and Ashaninka, and they had a lot to say about things, and you could feel how connected they were to their land and to where they live. And it's about collaboration, respect, honesty, and what they brought to us was reflections of their connection to the land and the way they'd see their lives. And I think it keeps us from building an authentic connection to it as well when we are constantly worried about issues like this. And it's not us against them or them against us. It's just trying to understand each other and learn from each other, really. And there's no shame in that. And it's just with the people that you are in that day, what they taught us, what we taught them, what we learned from each other. Having the opportunity to learn in that way is something really rare, and it was really special. And I really like participatory methods where we work with communities and we never tell stories for others. And as much as you can allow people to tell their own stories, the better. So rather than paraphrasing, just quoting. And I sent the piece that I wrote to them in Spanish because I wanted them to read it. I wanted to make sure that I didn't write about anything that I shouldn't have written about, or me writing about someone, just collaborating and making it a piece together. I would like to hear your own thoughts as well on this topic, as it's quite a challenging one.
It is a big topic that we really do need to talk about, because there's something underneath this about listening. And actually, this has been a theme throughout our entire conversation. It's about connection. It's about listening. It's about what does respect look like. And I think language matters and delivery matters. And we all need to make sure that what we're saying, despite it being our truth, our subjective truth, and challenge, I think, is really good. I don't think we should be in a world where we're all appeasing each other and we all think the same. Please. I would love to sit opposite with someone completely different to me who disagrees with me any day of the week than someone who just completely agrees with me. But we have to make sure when we're not discrediting each other and diminishing each other, because that's really not the point. When I hear those people who have challenges, have critiques, have different opinions, really my leaning is to listen in curiously. It takes some ego work at the beginning, because I'm like, I get a bit defensive myself because I'm so moved by the blog. I'm like, I was feeling this thing and now you made me think differently. I feel a bit defensive at the start, and it takes me about 5 minutes. And then I'm like, what is this person saying deeply and truly? And there are points to it of, let's make sure we're not pedestaling people and othering people. And we're humans. You're my neighbor. Let me just listen to you without going, I must take on everything you do and say. Ultimately, I need to be myself. So there is a point to that. Let's not think any of us are holier than thou, whether it's a tree conservationist, whether it's someone visiting us, whether it's the project manager or the general manager, whoever it is. Let's not pedestal. Let's really just listen and take what we take, disagree with what we disagree with. And also there's this point of, let's not discredit all of science either, because really and truly, if it wasn't for the people who've studied leaves and bugs and birds and put them into words, I wouldn't know half the stuff I know. But also, when I've read studies about people visiting the country and studying the birds, they've taught us things that we never knew.
Mhm.
And that's important. So there's a point in both. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
So I'm going to move things on a little bit here. And Ale, I'm really curious to know about how you see the connection of forests that you work with in the southwest of England and those you might have studied in South America, but how both of those have the ocean as a really major factor in what has led to their really important ecology and the way that they function as well. So what insights can you bring forward on that front?
So temperate rainforests, we are slowly seeing them more and more as ocean forests because they are so connected to the ocean and the two ecosystems are interconnected. And for a long time, we haven't seen them as such. I actually started learning about it throughout my studies and just seeing like how the Mapuche related to it as one as well. But now being able to work as a communications officer in this project, I'm learning so much about it and I find it absolutely fascinating. I have a new blog coming out called Oceans and Forests. So the Woodland Trust, we commissioned a report to the University of Exeter to Dr. Benjamin Phillips. So he researched all studies done on these oceans and forest links. And we found approximately like 270 peer-reviewed papers. And it was interestingly enough, Europe, even though temperate rainforests are part of the UK and western coast of Norway and the north of Spain, there's barely any research on these connections and these links between oceans and forests. So there is a massive call to action that we want to bring forward for universities and people in Europe to research this more because it could really benefit our ecosystems and our restoration projects. But yeah, mainly to say that the oceans feed forest and the forest feeds the oceans is what we want to bring forward, really. Like restoring the forest could bring increased fish stocks in the ocean, which is like a new thing that we are discovering. Salmons, eagles, there's all these rainforest species that create a connection between the forest and the ocean. And so in the UK, salmons have collapsed. There's barely any left now. But if we restore the forest and we re-wet the forest, so we do natural flood management projects, so expanding the rivers and creating more room for the rivers to breathe and hopefully create a space and a forest that salmon and eagles want to return to, then that could increase basically a nutrient cycle. So the salmons spawn at the top of the river, go to the ocean and then come back. And then they bring all these nutrients from the ocean to the forest and vice versa. So we are creating this web of nutrients that is currently missing, but that should come back and that can come back by restoring the forest. And it's just amazing. Like the plankton that we have in the ocean, which feeds so many fishes in the ocean, is actually created from the forest. So like it's basically all connected and we're just starting to understand that once again now. And it's something I'm really passionate about. And there's a lot to say on it, this topic. I write a lot better than I speak. So when you read it, you probably understand better if I haven't explained it very well. But it's absolutely incredible. And what else can I say?
That's
I mean,
epic. Hold on. Wait. It's so simple now you've said it. So our forests, if you zoom out, they're completely connected to our ocean.
yeah,
And I was thinking how, and you've basically said the fish can run through our rivers and then there's an exchange between nutrients from ocean to forest and vice versa.
yeah, yeah. I'm going to try to explain it a bit better. But
Are there more ways that... Sorry, I'm
so we've
really
seen,
excited about this
I'm
now.
going to explain it a little bit better. I have my blog
Okay.
here now, so hopefully I can sort of like read and try to explain it better and we can cut through and make it nice
Okay.
and compact.
It made sense the first one, but yeah, this is really cool.
So yeah, so basically in other rainforest nations like Japan, Canada, they have based their whole restoration activities through this connection between the oceans and the forests and bringing back species that connect the two. So for us, it would be salmons, sea eagles, and yeah, basically fishes that nest inland but feed from the sea. So
Okay.
they are bringing this connection between the ocean and the forest because they will go to the ocean to get some of the fish and eat, and then they'll bring back the carcasses to where they nest. So that will feed the soil and create a web of nutrients that is the most natural thing that exists, but that we don't think about when we're restoring and when we're creating restoration activities or management of the forests. But in Japan, they called this Suki Rin. It means fish breeding forests. So it basically says that by healthy forests upstream contribute to abundant fish populations. So we are increasing fish stocks in our oceans by restoring the rainforests that are around said oceans, which is massive in terms of our capacity of our ecosystems to bring life to both the ocean and the forest. And Sam has this metaphor, which is like basically of a tea bag. So imagine the forest is a tea bag, and the forest infuse the land and gradually add nutrients to the rivers, then go all the way to the oceans. So it's like a tea bag slowly releasing flavor and nourishment to our oceans from the forests. So the nutrients from the forest traveling down to the ocean through the rivers. But the thing is that if the nutrients are carried too quickly, so currently our rivers are really fast streamed. So we are doing this thing called natural flood management, where we are expanding the rivers and returning them to their natural habitat. So re-wetting the floor, bringing a lot of moisture and just more water to our soils by expanding it. So with natural flood management, we would add dead wood to the rivers, and then the rivers would expand. And rather than just like this really fast flowing that we have at the moment, it would be a lot more slow, and that would allow the rivers to breathe, and then it would bring all these nutrients into the ocean the way that they're meant to be carried, which is slower rather than really fast, because otherwise it creates this malnutrition in the forest. So algal blooms that can harm marine life. So it's all interconnected, and we're just beginning to learn about this because we haven't actually researched it in the UK that much. And how would that change the way that we restore? But we lack this connection that is like the biggest part of any other rainforest nation. So in Canada, the salmon, the seagulls was their main focus when they were restoring their temperate rainforest. Yeah, it's amazing. And then the forests also protect like kelp and seagrass. So there's like how many? 790 hectares of potential seagrass restoration sites in Devon, Cornwall. So if we combined forest and marine restoration, we could bring like multiple benefits to the ocean and the forest. So cleaner water, healthier marine ecosystems, and just a stronger carbon storage across both land and sea. So it's really new. It's really big, and we're just understanding what are the methods to maybe make this connection even bigger and to create this oceans and forest links for the benefit of everyone, and climate change, everything in the future. And I'm really interested in this. I've actually been thinking about potentially studying a PhD in this topic because it's quite a new thing, and it would be amazing to be able to research it and just help NGOs and conservation charities that are working on restoring the land. And I think we've forgotten that the earth is holistic and it's interconnected, and we can't see it as two separate things. It's not the trees and the ocean, it's together. How do we restore and reconnect both of them? I think we need to start thinking about it in this way because it can bring so many benefits to both the ocean and the forest if we actually understood their interconnections and how the forest speaks the sea and the sea speaks the trees, basically. Does that make sense?
That's brilliant. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, so this is so British based and on a really practical level, but I'm thinking ahead and just thinking about like seagulls having something else to eat other than my sandwich.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
not seagulls, it's sea eagles.
Sea eagles. Okay, right.
Yeah. So these
Sorry.
eagles before were very widespread in the UK,
Mhm.
but now they've basically left our forest because they didn't have enough fish to feed on or anything. But now they're starting to come back. So we've actually seen 2 sea eagles in Dorset, and we're hoping that they would return to Devon and Cornwall soon and just start recreating this nutrient cycle that is currently missing. Yeah. Makes sense.
That's beautiful.
There's another bird that is called the Manx shearwater in the UK. So it's basically forest nesting seabirds. So they will feed from the sea and then nest in the forest. So just bringing all these birds back, it's really important. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
I can't wait to learn more about that. And I'm also a little bit concerned about your sandwiches, Arifah. unfortunately, yeah, they're still going to be at risk.
I heard seagulls. Sorry.
Yeah, seagulls are evil, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ale, when you start your PhD, if you could also solve that one, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got like just a few minutes left, and I'd like to just start to round things up. But before I hand to Ale to sign us off with her final thoughts, I'm going to just ask you, Arifah, to share your own sign off actually. So yeah, where are you at today?
I feel really moved and grounded and excited actually. The fact that we could talk about loss and then straight after talk about hope gets me really excited, because so often in our sector, we do a review of what we've got around us, and sometimes we reach a little bit of a wall and go, oh, this is how things are. Let's conserve it as it is. I've heard about 2 or 3 things today that I can be researching and have quite a lot of hope for. It just makes me excited, and also just it's lovely meeting brilliant humans. So it's a pleasure to meet you, Ali. Consider me a reader. I'm gonna stay tuned, and thank you for teaching me today. I love being a student. So yeah, thank you for having me, Tom.
Yeah, well, no, thanks to both of you. So to those listening, this is like the first call on a Monday morning. We've squeezed this in. So yeah, grateful to you both to come into some pretty kind of weighty topics and yeah, helping navigate us through those. I'm really grateful. And it's been a great chat, and I feel well set up now for the rest of the week. So cheers for that. But yeah, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ale to sign us off.
Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I've loved talking to both of you. Maybe my last message is that working on temperate rainforests has really taught me that it's not just about biodiversity, but rewilding our minds. And maybe my message would be to just let yourself be changed by the forest, just listen, walk slowly, ask questions, and find what inspires you to take action and to feel that connection to the land and to yourself.
You've been listening to the Meaning of Trees podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, leave a comment and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And see you next time.